I want you to picture something for a second. And I have a really strong feeling this is going to strike a very familiar chord with you.
Oh, I bet it will.
Yeah.
Huh.
So imagine you are sitting at your desk and it is incredibly late. Like everyone else in the house is completely asleep.
It's dead quiet.
Exactly. The only light in the whole room is this cold, bluish glow radiating from your laptop screen, and it's casting these long, kind of distorted shadows across the wall right behind you.
I can picture that perfectly. We've all been there.
Right. And right next to your keyboard, there is this half-empty mug of coffee that you completely forgot about like 3 hours ago.
Oh, yeah, and it's leaving that damp brown ring on the cardboard coaster.
Yes. And the house is so quiet that the only thing you can actually hear is the low, mechanical hum of the refrigerator all the way in the kitchen.
It's very specific kind of isolation, honestly.
It really is. And in that moment, your shoulders are practically pinned up to your ears with tension. I mean, you are pushing incredibly hard for a breakthrough.
Pushing so hard.
Maybe you're trying to land this massive promotion, or you are pouring just your entire soul into launching a new business.
Or even, desperately trying to fix a relationship that feels like sand slipping through your fingers.
Right, exactly. You are putting in the absolute maximum number of hours. You are hustling.
And the tragic irony of that exact moment,
Mm.
the part that makes your stomach just completely drop, is that despite all that physical output, the breakthrough you were agonizing over just remains perpetually out of reach.
Always just one step away.
Always. It feels like you are swimming upstream against a raging, ice-cold current.
Yeah.
You're expending massive amounts of caloric energy just to, well, avoid being swept backward.
And that is the exact frustration we are tearing apart today because the feeling is just so visceral for so many of us.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you hustle, you grind, you completely overhaul your external strategies, you read the articles, you download all the new productivity apps.
Back to saying the right things in the mirror.
Yeah, and the result just slips away again. And the most confusing part, the part that genuinely makes you feel like you are just losing your mind, is that it often feels like things start to fall apart right at the exact moment you apply the absolute most physical effort.
It's like the universe is playing a joke on you.
It really feels that way. Like, why is that? Why do we get so utterly exhausted trying to force the puzzle pieces together only to have the table violently bumped?
That's a great way to put it.
Today, we are opening up a really fascinating stack of documents. It's this brilliant mix of esoteric philosophy, modern psychological frameworks, and material focused on the actual mechanics of reality creation. We're doing this to figure out exactly why that late-night hustle is failing you.
And it really is failing us.
It is. Our mission in this exploration of the provided materials today is to understand how we can, finally shift from that exhausting, burnout-inducing hustle culture into something the sources call aligned, effortless action.
But to do that, it requires a pretty profound shift in perspective. I mean, the core thesis emerging from these documents completely flips our standard operating procedure right on its head.
Completely upside down.
Yeah. If we look at the root cause of the burnout you just described, the reason you feel like you are swimming upstream is that reality isn't actually responding to your external hustle at all.
Wait, not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It simply isn't reacting to the physical force you're applying to the world. It's responding to something much, much deeper and much more subtle.
Okay, so what is it actually responding to then?
Well, the documents suggest that the outer physical world you interact with every day, so your bank account, your career, your relationships, is merely a delayed reflection of your inner mental and emotional world.
A delayed reflection.
Right. You're essentially trying to change the reflection in the bathroom mirror by frantically scrubbing the glass, rather than changing the expression on the face of the person standing right in front of you.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we are operating completely backward.
Entirely backward.
But if that is true, I have to ask, why is the illusion so incredibly convincing? Like, why has human evolution wired us to focus solely on the physical action to the point where we will literally sit at a laptop until 3 in the morning, believing that the keystrokes are what will save us?
Well, because the physical world is loud.
Yeah.
I mean, our senses are specifically designed to prioritize immediate, loud threats.
Like paying rent.
Exactly.
Huh?
But the materials establish that the inner world is the true architect of your life. And this inner world is composed of two primary planes.
Okay, let's break those down.
So first, you have the mental plane. This consists of your thoughts, your internal imagery, the pictures you consistently hold in your mind's eye.
Right.
And second, you have the spiritual or emotional plane,
Yeah.
which we can essentially understand as your energy. I mean, emotion is quite literally energy in motion.
Energy in motion, I like that.
Yeah, and the documents argue that the outer physical world always follows this inner world. The inner world is the cause, and the physical world is simply the lagging effect.
Okay, hold on. When I hear that, there's this very loud, logical part of my brain that immediately puts up a roadblock.
I don't blame you. Most people do.
Because the physical world feels so incredibly dominant. It demands our attention with taxes, alarm clocks, physical pain, all of it.
And very demanding.
But the sources highlight a scientific fact here that completely shatters that perception. And honestly, it is very hard to wrap your mind around.
You're talking about the empty space concept.
Yes. It points out that 99.9% of our reality is just empty space and energy.
Which is mind-blowing.
It really is. In fact, the text notes that if you gathered all the actual solid physical matter from every single human being on Earth,
All 8 billion of us.
yeah, all 8 billion,
Yeah.
and you somehow extracted all the empty space from our atoms, all of that remaining physical matter would be small enough to fit inside a single sugar cube.
A single sugar cube. I mean, it completely violently contradicts our daily sensory experience, doesn't it?
It does, because a single sugar cube for 8 billion people sounds literally impossible. My brain immediately rejects the math.
Because we rely so heavily on touch.
Right, like when I knock on a solid oak desk or when I feel the rough texture of a concrete sidewalk under my shoes, it feels terribly permanent, it feels static, dense and undeniable.
Of course.
If I punch a brick wall, my hand breaks. That does not feel like empty space.
Not at all.
So if we are mostly empty space and energy and the physical matter of all humanity could fit into my morning coffee, how do the sources reconcile that with the pain of punching a wall?
That's the million-dollar question.
And more importantly, why do we spend all our time trying to forcefully rearrange the tiny sugar cube of physical reality instead of shifting our energy, which makes up like the vast majority of what we actually are?
Okay, so let's address the wall first, because that's the most common pushback. When you punch a brick wall and your hand breaks, you aren't actually making contact with solid matter in the way you think you are.
Really? Then what is breaking my hand?
What you are experiencing is the electromagnetic repulsion between the electrons in the atoms of your hand and the electrons in the atoms of the wall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an energetic barrier. It's a force field, not a solid collision. Your brain translates that energetic repulsion into the sensation of touch and pain.
So it's essentially an interface.
Exactly. We are biologically equipped with 5 senses that are specifically designed to translate these energetic interactions into a physical interface we can actually navigate.
So we don't trip over things.
Right. We don't have sensory organs that explicitly decode the 99.9% of empty space and frequency. We are blind to the vastness of our own energetic makeup, so we default to what the interface tells us is real.
That is fascinating.
Let's ground this in a very relatable everyday scenario. If you are listening to this right now, think about a time you were sitting in gridlock traffic on your way to an important meeting.
Oh, man. The ultimate modern stress test.
It really is. You are gripping the steering wheel so hard, your knuckles are turning white. You can feel the tension radiating up the back of your neck. Your jaw is clamped shut.
And you are just staring at that endless sea of red taillights stretching out in front of you.
Exactly. And in that moment, your senses are screaming at you that the physical cars, the smell of exhaust fumes, the ticking clock on the dashboard, that is the absolute, undeniable reality.
It feels like the only reality.
But the actual reality being generated in that moment, the one that is acting as the architect for your future, is the internal frequency you are broadcasting.
Wait, so the frustration is the actual reality?
Yes, you are emitting a frequency of deep frustration, impatience, panic, and just a complete lack of control. And according to the documents, that internal state is actively programming your future physical experiences to match that exact frequency.
You are essentially like ordering more traffic jams for your future, metaphorically speaking.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
You are signaling to the fabric of reality, bring me more situations that evoke this exact feeling of gripping a steering wheel in helpless gridlock.
That is the logical conclusion of the text, yeah. You think you were just reacting defensively to the traffic, but you were actually utilizing the emotional friction of the traffic to build the architecture of your tomorrow.
Wow. So if the inner world creates the outer world, the natural next step for any rational person is to say, okay, well, I am going to change my inner state right now.
Right. I'm going to fix it immediately.
Yeah. I'm going to release my grip on the steering wheel. I'm going to take a deep breath, listen to a calming audiobook, and just feel abundant and peaceful.
Which sounds great in theory.
But let's look at what actually happens when we finally decide to make that internal shift. Because from my reading of the materials, making that positive shift rarely results in an immediate parade and a shower of gold coins falling from the sky.
Oh, definitely not. Usually it's the exact opposite.
Right. In fact, it triggers something deeply uncomfortable, which leads to one of the most misunderstood universal laws discussed in the texts.
It triggers chaos. Which brings us to what the sources call the law of balance and harmony.
The law of balance and harmony.
Right. The universe, much like any closed thermodynamic system, is a self-regulating mechanism that constantly seeks to balance your inner frequency with your physical circumstances. They have to match. They must remain in harmony.
Okay, but harmony usually implies something good.
But we need to be very careful with that word here, because it doesn't necessarily mean peaceful or pleasant. It just means in resonance.
Ah, I see.
If you are constantly angry, bitter, and resentful internally, and your outer life is full of constant drama, broken appliances, and arguments.
The universe considers that system perfectly balanced.
Exactly. The inner and outer match.
So the gears are locked together, the system is stable, even if the stability is completely miserable.
Stability is the perfect word. But let's say you decide to do the internal work. You start elevating your inner world. You manage to think and feel better consistently. Not just for an hour after listening to a motivational speech, but for a few solid weeks.
Okay, so you're doing the work, you maintain a frequency of abundance, gratitude, calm. What happens?
Well, you have just introduced a massive disruption into a stable system. You have created an imbalance.
Because your external life is still a mess.
Yes, your inner world has elevated, but your physical life, because physical matter is incredibly dense and notoriously slow to move, is still lagging behind at the old lower frequency.
So the universe looks at this discrepancy and says, warning, system out of balance. We have high-frequency internal energy existing inside a low-frequency physical environment.
And to restore balance, the regulating forces of the universe only have two options. Either your dense physical reality must be forcefully elevated to meet your new inner state, or you must be pushed to drop your inner state back down to match your old reality. Precisely. And the balancing forces do not care which direction you go. They are entirely impartial. They only care about restoring equilibrium to the system.
This is where the material gets genuinely shocking, in my opinion, because the transition period where the physical world is trying to catch up to your new positive mindset is almost never a smooth, gentle, upward slope.
No, it is usually incredibly turbulent.
The texts refer to this volatile period as the storm, and this is the exact part of the process that trips almost everyone up. When the physical world starts rising to meet your new elevated state, the old structures often fall apart completely.
They have to fall apart. I mean, you cannot build a modern skyscraper on the rotting wooden foundation of a garden shed. The shed has to be demolished first.
That makes sense. Let me give a concrete example from the sources to make this real for you listening. Let's say a person starts heavily cultivating a mindset of deep abundance, self-worth, and respect.
They're doing the internal visualization, feeling good.
Exactly. Suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, they get fired from their seemingly stable but completely soul-crushing underpaying job. Or perhaps a 10-year friendship with someone they considered close abruptly ends over a bizarre, uncharacteristic misunderstanding.
To the outside observer, it looks like a disaster.
To the person experiencing it, their life is completely unraveling. So when my life feels like it's falling apart, when the metaphorical roof starts leaking, the car breaks down, and I lose my income just as I'm trying to be positive and do the right things, are the documents suggesting that this disaster is actually a good sign?
It is an exceptional sign, provided you have the awareness to understand the mechanics of what is happening.
Okay, explain that.
Those old physical structures, the soul-crushing job that paid you less than you were worth, the draining friendship built on complaining, they vibrate at a much lower rate. They're a match for the old version of you.
They're dense and heavy.
Very dense. For your physical reality to rise up and meet your new frequency of abundance and self-respect, those old heavy structures must be cleared out to make space.
So the universe is quite literally excavating your life.
It is bringing in the wrecking ball. However, because we are not taught these mechanics, Most people completely panic during the storm.
They see the wrecking ball and they dive right back into the shed.
They do. They lose the job, the eviction notice arrives, and they immediately drop their internal state back down into absolute terror, desperation, and unworthiness.
And what happens then?
The exact moment they drop their internal frequency, the universe stops the demolition. It says, "Ah, perfect, balance restored." The internal terror matches the external lack, and it leaves them exactly where they started, trapped in a lower frequency reality.
Oh, that is devastating.
They allow the temporary chaos of the upgrade to trick them into canceling the upgrade entirely.
You cancel the upgrade because the installation process was too noisy.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it, yes.
That is such a painful, profound realization. I think about how many times I've tried to change my life, hit a wall of bad luck, and assumed it was a sign from the universe that I wasn't meant to succeed.
But the bad luck was actually the universe trying to make room for the success.
Exactly. So, practically speaking, how do we survive the installation process? If my bank account is draining, how do I not panic?
Sources offer a very specific, actionable tool for this, which they call reducing significance.
I'd love to unpack how this works. Because when we pedestalize a goal, when we grip it so tightly and declare to ourselves that we must have it or our life is entirely ruined, we create a massive imbalance.
We push it away. We create what the texts call excess potential.
Can you explain the physics of excess potential? Why does wanting something badly make it run away?
Think of excess potential like a heavily weighted pendulum. The natural resting state of a pendulum is hanging straight down, completely still.
Right.
That is the state of zero importance, zero resistance. When you apply massive significance to a goal, let's say you decide that if you don't get this specific promotion, you are a failure and your family will starve. You pull that pendulum extremely far to one side.
You are applying immense psychological pressure to the fabric of reality.
Yes. And the universe, which constantly seeks balance, cannot sustain that level of tension. So the balancing forces swing the pendulum violently back in the opposite direction to neutralize the tension you created.
And the pendulum swinging back is the promotion going to your coworker.
Exactly. The universe neutralizes your desperate clinging by removing the object of your desperation.
That is the mechanism. It is remarkably similar to desperation in a romantic setting, actually.
Oh, it's the exact same dynamic.
Like, if someone is overly needy, constantly texting, and makes you solely responsible for their entire sense of happiness, it is energetically repellent. It feels suffocating.
Your instinct is to back away and create distance. The universe reacts the exact same way to our desperate white-knuckled desires. It backs away.
So during the storm, when things are falling apart, the car is making a weird noise, and you're tempted to panic and pull the pendulum to the side. The tool the sources suggest is using what they call storm breakers.
Storm breakers, right.
These are internal phrases designed to actively calm the nervous system and manually reduce that fatal significance. When the eviction notice comes or the big project fails, instead of spiraling into a narrative of doom, you tell yourself, something positively amazing is happening for me right now.
But you can't just say it hollowly, like a toxic positivity robot.
Right, you have to feel the physical sensation of taking a slow, deep breath. You physically signal safety to your body while your external world is reorganizing itself.
You are intentionally denying the negative sense data your eyes and ears are feeding you in favor of holding your internal vision. You are maintaining the high ground.
If you refuse to drop your frequency during the storm, the physical world eventually has no choice but to rise up and meet you.
It has no choice.
But the lag time between holding that high ground and the physical world actually changing, that lag time is the killer.
It's the hardest part.
That is where everyone gives up. If I change my frequency on a Tuesday, and I hold it through the storm on Wednesday, why isn't my reality completely different by Thursday? Like, why do I have to wait months sometimes?
That delay brings us to another foundational concept from the documents. The law of continuity.
The law of continuity.
Yes, the universe relies on strict continuity, so the psychological illusion of reality doesn't break. Think about the human mind. If you completely change your internal state today, and your external world just snapped its fingers and looked entirely different tomorrow.
Like if you went to sleep in a studio apartment and woke up in a mansion with a completely different spouse.
Exactly. It would shatter your psychological immersion in the human experience. You would lose your mind. You would be institutionalized.
That makes sense. The reality must transition logically to preserve your sanity.
Right. There is a wonderfully valid analogy from the sources that perfectly illustrates this need for continuity, and it involves a video game building.
Oh, I love this analogy. Let's unpack it. Imagine a towering, infinitely tall skyscraper where every single floor is a different genre of video game.
Okay.
The bottom floors, like the deep basement levels, are survival horror games. Everything is terrifying, resources are incredibly scarce, the lighting is terrible, and you are constantly under attack from monsters.
Sounds miserable.
It is. But the top floors, the glittering penthouses, are games of absolute abundance. You are the king of the realm, resources flow freely, the landscapes are beautiful, and life is completely effortless.
And you, the listener, are currently playing your life on whatever floor corresponds to your current internal circumstances.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's say you are currently on the horror floor. You are miserable. You are constantly anxious about money. Your relationships are dramatic. And you are yelling at the programmer of that floor, demanding they give you better items, demanding they make the monsters go away.
But the programmer's only job, their sole directive, is to maintain the integrity of the horror game. They cannot give you a magic wand of abundance on the horror floor because it would break the rules of the game they are assigned to manage.
So to get the magic wand, you have to change floors.
And to change floors, you must step into the elevator. In this analogy, the elevator represents your inner world. You step into the quiet of the elevator, you change your internal frequency, and you press the up button.
You ride the elevator to the abundance floor.
But here is the massive catch, and this is where the law of continuity kicks in and ruins everyone's expectations. When you arrive at the top floor, the programmer of the new abundance game isn't allowed to just spawn you into a perfect new life.
This is perhaps the most crucial point in the entire document for understanding manifestation. They don't hand you a pristine, brand new reality. The universe has to port your old save file into the new environment.
So the new programmer has to look at your tangled horror code and slowly, methodically write out the old, terrifying characters and gradually write in the new, abundant ones.
Because the universe demands a logical bridge between who you were and who you are becoming.
What this means in your everyday waking life is that the transition phase feels remarkably clumsy and deeply unconvincing.
Very clumsy.
Think about the sensory detail of that specific moment. You've done the internal work, you've braved the storm, you step out of the elevator onto the new floor, you hear that soft, pleasant ding.
The metal doors slide open.
Right, you step out expecting to see a gleaming marble-floored penthouse bathed in golden sunlight. But instead you look around and see the exact same peeling yellowed wallpaper from the horror floor you thought you just left. You see the same flickering, buzzing fluorescent lights. You see the same annoying coworker.
And this is exactly where 99% of people fail the test.
They give up right there.
They do. They look at the peeling wallpaper and they say, this didn't work. This whole reality creation thing is a scam. I am still in the horror game.
Yeah.
And they sprint back into the safety of the elevator, press the down button, and return to the misery they know simply because it is familiar.
They do not have the patience to endure the transitional period.
They refuse to wait for the programmer to finish rewriting the code. If they had just stayed on the new floor, held their internal frequency, and ignored the outdated scenery, they would have slowly noticed the wallpaper starting to peel away to reveal marble underneath.
They would have noticed a new character walking into their life, offering a strange but lucrative opportunity.
Exactly. But they couldn't tolerate the clunkiness of the continuity phase.
They let the old code trick them. So what does it take to actually hold that frequency and not sprint back to the elevator when the wallpaper looks terrible?
It takes a fundamental shift.
It seems like it requires a shift in how we operate at a biological level. I mean, we can't just think positive. We have to rewrite our default settings. And the sources actually go into some fascinating territory here. They suggest that our literal DNA vibrates and broadcasts a continuous signal to the environment.
The proposition is startling, especially for anyone raised on traditional biology. The idea presented is that your DNA is not merely a static, unchangeable blueprint that you inherited and are stuck with forever. It is highly malleable.
Highly malleable.
Yes, it is constantly emitting a vibration based on your accumulated thoughts, feelings, and habitual actions. And you can actively upgrade this genetic signal, essentially altering the blueprint itself by shifting your daily paradigm.
I have to pause here because claiming that our literal DNA vibrates and changes based on our mood is a massive statement. How do the sources justify that? Are we talking about literal structural changes to the double helix, or is this more about epigenetics, how certain genes are turned on or off based on the chemical environment our emotions create in our bodies?
The documents align very closely with the principles of epigenetics combined with an energetic framework. When you experience an emotion, your brain releases a cascade of neuropeptides and hormones.
Right, the chemical bath.
Exactly. If you are constantly in a state of fear, your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. This chemical environment bathes your cells and actually downregulates certain genes while upregulating others, primarily those associated with survival and stress.
So over time, this becomes your baseline genetic expression.
Yes, the energetic signal you broadcast to the sugar cube of physical reality is one of fear and contraction. But if you change the internal emotional environment, you change the chemical bath, which alters the genetic expression, which in turn upgrades the energetic signal you are broadcasting.
Okay, that clarifies it. The sources outline 3 distinct modes of living that directly impact the signal, and determining which mode you are in is absolutely crucial.
Let's go through them.
The first mode is what they call to me. This is pure victimhood. Life happens to me. You are waiting for life to happen. You feel entirely powerless, constantly reacting to whatever disasters roll your way. You get a flat tire and say, why does this always happen to me?
A very common state.
Very common. The second mode is by me. This is the hustle culture we talked about at the very beginning of our discussion. Life happens by my force. You take immense physical action, but you completely ignore universal laws.
You are fighting the current.
Right. You might actually get some impressive results in this mode, but you will inevitably burn out, suffer health issues, or ruin your relationships because you are using brute physical force against the massive weight of the universe.
It's unsustainable.
Totally. And then there's the third mode, through me. This is the ultimate goal. You operate as a co-creator. Life happens through you. You take intuitive, aligned action while fully cooperating with the natural laws of the universe.
You are no longer swimming upstream.
Exactly. You have flipped onto your back and are floating effortlessly with the river, letting the current do the heavy lifting.
If we look at the difficulty of transitioning in between these modes, we can compare it to an old analog car radio.
And I love this analogy too.
You are driving down the highway at night, and your radio dial is currently tuned to a station playing harsh, static-filled, chaotic jazz. That represents the to me station. You cannot simply sit in the driver's seat and wish to hear an upbeat rock and roll song while your physical dial is locked onto the jazz frequency.
You can't just think the new song into existence.
No, you must physically reach out, grab the dial, and turn it. And here is the uncomfortable part. As you turn it, you lose the jazz station and enter the dead zone. You have to sit through a harsh, uncomfortable burst of loud white noise and static before the new rock station finally locks in.
That dead zone of static is exactly like the video game continuity phase. It's the messy middle.
It really is.
I love this car radio analogy, but let me ask a highly practical question on behalf of anyone listening who is currently struggling.
Go for it.
Let's say I wake up on a Tuesday morning. The alarm goes off. It is pitch dark outside. My body feels incredibly heavy, like lead. My chest is tight with a vague, looming anxiety about bills and work. In that moment, I am perfectly seamlessly tuned to the to-me station of dread.
Your DNA is broadcasting pure survival mode.
Exactly. How do I actually reach out and turn the dial in that moment? Because telling someone who is deeply anxious to just feel abundant feels impossible. It feels like telling a drowning person to simply breathe water.
It does feel impossible when you are engulfed in it. This is where the documents introduce a brilliantly pragmatic tool, the Feel Good Now list, backed by what esoteric traditions call the principle of correspondence.
The principle of correspondence, what's that?
The principle states that the physical, mental, and spiritual planes are inextricably linked together like gears in a watch. What happens on one plane immediately affects the others.
Okay, so they move together.
Because of this mechanical linkage, if you cannot change your emotional state, you can force a shift from the bottom up by using your physical body.
So if you are spiraling on the mental plane and you can't think your way out of the anxiety, you stop trying. You use your physical body to interrupt the energetic pattern.
Exactly. You don't wait for the mood to strike you. You don't wait to feel happy before you act happy, because the feeling will never come while you are tuned to the frequency of dread.
Let's paint a picture of how this sensory application actually works in real life. You are caught in a mental loop of anxiety, sitting on the edge of your bed. Instead of sitting there analyzing the anxiety, you immediately stand up.
Right.
You physically feel the stretch in your calves as you rise. You walk into the bathroom, turn on the shower, step into the hot water, and you start singing loudly and completely off key to the sound of the rushing water.
You aren't singing because you are happy.
No, you are singing to make yourself happy.
Mm.
You are using the physical vibration of your vocal cords, the deep breathing required to project your voice, and the physical movement of your body to force a corresponding shift in your emotional and mental planes.
You are manually forcing the radio dial through the static. It will feel entirely clunky. It will feel fake and forced at first. You will feel ridiculous singing in the shower while your mind is worried about a presentation.
Oh, totally ridiculous.
But by consistently choosing to activate an item from your Feel Good Now list, whether it is singing, doing 20 jumping jacks, walking briskly in nature, or physically roughhousing with a dog, you are sending a brand new chemical and energetic signal to your DNA.
You are manually interrupting the old automated programming of victimhood.
Yes, you are.
So interrupting the pattern with physical action is the immediate triage. It stops the bleeding in the moment. But I can't live in the shower.
No.
If I step out, dry off, and go back to my desk, the static is going to eventually creep back in. How do the sources suggest we permanently fix the radio so it stays on the right station?
We have to actively program it.
How do we build that new reality intentionally rather than just fending off the old one? This brings us to the ultimate tool mentioned in the documents, a highly specific 30-minute daily visualization practice.
And we must be abundantly clear here because the word visualization is often misunderstood.
Yeah, it gets a bad rap.
It does. This is not just absent-minded daydreaming about winning the lottery. It is a highly structured, rigorous protocol designed to hit what the texts call the sweet spot. It is deliberately broken down into two crucial, non-negotiable parts. The first part is 10 solid minutes of passive meditation.
Which is the exact part that impatient, hustle-minded people absolutely love to skip.
They skip it, and it ruins the entire process. Passive meditation, which involves simply focusing on your breath, observing your thoughts without attachment, or repeating a simple, meaningless mantra, is designed entirely to calm the central nervous system and lower your brainwave state from frantic beta down to relaxed alpha or theta.
You have to slow down first.
The analogy provided in the materials is brilliant. You wouldn't attempt to take a grueling cross-country road trip in a beat-up car without first stopping to put gas in the tank and check the oil.
Of course not.
If you skip the passive meditation and jump straight into visualizing your goals, you're trying to drive an empty car. The passive meditation fuels the vehicle, lowers the resistance, and prepares the soil of the subconscious mind so you can actually plant the seed.
Once the vehicle is fueled and your brainwaves are slowed down, you move into the second part, 20 minutes of active visualization. This is where you hit that sweet spot, the exact intersection where your mental thoughts and your deep physical emotions finally align and lock in together.
But there is a very specific, surprising rule from the text on how to execute this, and it contradicts almost everything you see in popular media about manifesting.
It really does. Most people assume they need to visualize a sprawling 2-hour cinematic movie of their perfect future life. They picture the new house, then the new car, then the vacation, then the perfect partner.
The rule here is the exact opposite. Do not visualize a complex narrative. You must isolate and focus intensely on a single 10 to 20-second scene.
You have to keep watering one single seed rather than sprinting around with a watering can, sprinkling a few drops over a massive, barren field.
Density is the objective here. By looping the same 10-second scene over and over, you create energetic density. It crystallizes the image in the quantum field.
Let's give a concrete example of how this looks and feels, because the sensory details are what make it work. Let's say your goal is visualizing a major promotion at work, the one you've been hustling for until 3 in the morning.
Okay, the big promotion.
You do not picture the whole year leading up to it. You don't picture the grueling board meetings or doing the actual work. You picture the 10 seconds immediately after the goal is achieved.
The moment of completion.
Exactly. You picture the exact moment of shaking your boss's hand as they say, "Congratulations, the position is yours." You focus entirely on the microsensory details of that 10-second loop.
Make it real.
You feel the firm, physical grip of their hand against your palm. You notice the slightly stale smell of the office coffee lingering in the hallway. You hear the low, ambient, almost irritating hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. You notice the specific color of the tie your boss is wearing. You play those exact 10 seconds over and over and over for 20 minutes.
You immerse yourself so deeply into the sensory reality of that specific moment that your physical body begins to literally believe it has already happened.
Because the body doesn't know the difference.
Exactly. Remember, the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined event and a real physical event. You are generating the exact emotional and chemical signature of the event before the event occurs in the physical world. You are becoming the reflection before the mirror has a chance to catch up.
The text mentions a fascinating, undeniable benchmark for success here. You know you have executed the technique correctly if, when you finally open your eyes after the 20 minutes, you are genuinely physically startled by your current surroundings.
Startled by reality.
Yeah, you are startled by the rough physical texture of your own living room couch, or the sound of traffic outside your window, because for a moment, you truly forgot you were sitting there. You had fully relocated your consciousness to the inner world.
That is the exact level of psychological immersion required to signal the universe that a new physical reality must be materialized to match your internal state.
It's intense.
It is. But we have to address one final crucial piece of the puzzle. There is an accelerator discussed in the materials. Even if you are doing the daily visualization perfectly, even if you are bravely managing the storm and waiting out the continuity phase, you might still feel like your progress is painfully slow.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
It is. This is where we introduce the concept of shadow work, or what the documents beautifully describe as dropping the anchors.
This is such a powerful image, and I think everyone listening will relate to it. Imagine you are suspended deep underwater. You are desperately trying to swim toward the surface where the sunlight and oxygen are. You are kicking your legs as hard as you can, exhausting yourself, burning your lungs, but you are barely moving upward.
Most people in this situation, driven by that by-me hustle mentality, just assume they need to kick harder. They apply more physical force. They decide to wake up at 4 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. to kick more.
But the sources suggest a completely different, almost counterintuitive approach. Stop kicking for a second. Stop exhausting yourself. Look down through the murky water at your feet. What energetic blocks are you holding on to?
What's weighing you down?
Exactly. What ancient resentments against your parents? What lingering fears of failure? What deep-seated beliefs of unworthiness are wrapped around your ankles like heavy, rusted iron anchors?
Shadow work is the deeply uncomfortable process of bravely looking at those dark, ignored blocks and simply unclipping them.
And what's truly fascinating here is the physics of releasing those blocks. Once those iron anchors are unclipped, you don't even have to swim hard anymore. You don't have to hustle.
You naturally, effortlessly float upward to the surface because your natural, unburdened state is buoyancy. Releasing the internal resistance accomplishes infinitely more than applying external force ever could.
It changes absolutely everything about how we approach obstacles. If I'm not moving forward, my first question shouldn't be, how can I work harder? It should be, what am I dragging behind me?
That's the real work right there.
Okay, zooming out, I want to reflect on the overarching message of these documents because it really shakes up the foundation of our daily existence.
It really does.
We so often walk through everyday life. We are doing the laundry, we are paying the electric bill, we are sitting on the train during our morning commute, staring out the window, believing that we are mere passengers on a fixed, rigid ride. We think the world is happening to us, and all we can do is try to manage our emotional reaction to the bumps in the road.
But the truth these documents point to is infinitely warmer and so much more empowering than that.
We are not passengers on a train. We are the architects laying the tracks. Our potential is not locked into that dense, tiny, unyielding sugar cube of physical matter.
No, it isn't.
Our true potential exists in the boundless, malleable energy of our inner world. Every thought you allow to take root, every emotion you manage to shift, every deliberate visualization you engage in is a deliberate stroke of the architect's pen.
It is an incredible, almost overwhelming responsibility to realize you are generating your own experience, but it is also the ultimate freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of the gridlock traffic.
So I want to leave you with something to really mull over as you go about your day-to-day, as you encounter the normal frustrations of life. Imagine what your daily life would look like tomorrow if you truly, deeply, without a shadow of a doubt, believe that the physical world around you was just a mirror.
Think about how you treat actual mirrors. If you walked into your bathroom, looked in the mirror, and saw a smudge of dark dirt on your cheek, you would never reach out and try to violently scrub the cold glass to clean it.
You wouldn't yell at the mirror either.
Exactly. You would simply take a cloth and clean yourself. Consider the implications of that. What if the massive frustrations in your physical life, The stalled career, the gridlock traffic, the overwhelming financial stress, the relationship conflict are just dirt on the glass.
Just a reflection.
What if the universe is simply begging you to stop exhausting yourself by punching the mirror and instead wash the reflection at its source?
Such a powerful, fundamental shift in perspective. Stop scrubbing the glass. Start with the source, change the internal frequency, and the external reflection will inevitably, logically catch up. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of these materials today. We'll be back soon to unpack more incredible ideas. Until then, keep an eye on that inner architect.